And our lead story tonight, 113 days from Election Day, and the president may have just defined his campaign and the outcome of the election. President Obama on the campaign trail in Virginia left no doubt that he is the candidate of government and that government permits and allows hardworking businessmen and women in this country to succeed, a declaration outright that they didn't build their businesses, that rather someone else did. An unnamed collective, if you will, and a controversial take on the American dream that critics are calling an outright insult to millions of business owners, large and small.
Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we had that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. The internet didn't get invented on its own. Government research created the internet, so then all the companies could make money off the internet.
The president's revealing admission, a key to his political ideology. And with the real unemployment rate now hovering around 15%, and the president focused on raising taxes on the so-called rich, so far the message not resonating with voters. The polls tell the story. Minus a one-week period in late June, the president has been locked in a virtual tie with Governor Romney in the Gallup tracking poll since mid-April. Meanwhile, Democrats threatening to take the country over the fiscal cliff if they don't get the tax hikes they want. Mike Emanuel, Fox News chief congressional correspondent, with our report.
Leading Democrats are threatening to take the country over the fiscal cliff if Republicans won't agree to tax increases. That translates to allowing some $600 billion in tax hikes and spending cuts to take effect next year, which the head of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee laid out today.
So if we can't get a good deal, a balanced deal that calls on the wealthy to pay their fair share, then I will absolutely continue this debate into 2013, rather than lock in a long-term deal this year that throws middle-class families under the bus.
Republican leaders worry that would throw the economy back into a recession and say this shows Democrats would do anything to get their way.
Make no mistake, what the Democrats are proposing today is an entirely avoidable, high-stakes game of chicken with the single-minded goal of taking more money from those who earn it for government to waste.
In a Wall Street Journal op-ed with the headline, "The Tax Cliff is a Growth Killer," economist Arthur Laffer and financial analyst Ford Scudder wrote, quote, "The United States faces an economic collapse thanks to massive tax increases on January 1 and continued deficit spending for years on end."
That's about 3 1/3% of the whole U.S. economy. That's something like 20% of all tax revenues. That is a massive tax increase. And when you have tax increases like that, that precipitates a collapse.
The House is preparing to vote on extending all of the Bush tax cuts, while the White House and Majority Leader Harry Reid are supporting a $272 billion plan to extend the cuts for individuals making up to $200,000 and couples earning up to $250,000. President Obama has threatened to veto an extension for the top 2% and called on Congress to pass an extension for everybody else.
Let's skip the unnecessary drama, the needless delays, and all the partisan posturing, and let's just do the right thing for the people who sent us here to serve.
No, today, Senator Murray suggested if the Bush tax cuts expire, then any deal after that would be, in effect, a tax cut proposal and would free Republicans from their No New Taxes pledge. The man behind the pledge, Grover Norquist, says he expects Republicans in the House and Senate to continue to abide by the pledge, even if Mr. Obama is reelected in the fall. Lou?
Mike, thank you very much. Mike Emanuel, Fox News chief congressional correspondent. Reports tonight that Governor Romney is close to choosing a vice president, but one of those reports is from the New York Times. So we're going to a far more reliable source from the Romney campaign. Joining us now is senior Romney advisor, former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu, also White House Chief of Staff for President George H.W. Bush. Governor, good to have you with us. Is it true what the New York Times says?
Nothing in the New York Times is ever true.
Well, with that, is there any? I
have no idea. I have the advantage of having absolutely no idea. I work hard to not hear anything about the vice presidential process, so I can say irresponsible things like that.
Hardly irresponsible, but newsworthy, because we know that the content is fresh from the lips of Governor Romney himself. Good to have you with us. Let's turn to, now that we have dispensed with the New York Times report, let's turn to the remarks by President Obama Friday night, as I said at the outset. Little reported, but powerful in their impact, it seems, to suggest to small businessmen and women in particular, but it would apply to all hardworking businessmen and women in this country, that their success is not their own, but that others made it happen.
You know, every time he opens his mouth in this campaign, we're getting a better and better picture of how big a mistake we made in 2008. This is a guy who, with that comment you're talking about, demonstrates that he has absolutely no idea how free enterprise and a capitalist structure operates and works. And he's demonstrating that not only is he having a terrible problem managing the U.S. government, but this is a guy that can't even manage a lemonade stand. And every time he says something like that, more and more Americans are understanding that they bought a pretty wrapper with no substance in the 2008 election.
And what are we buying when it comes to this fiscal cliff that is looming?
It's not
Patty Murray, the number 4 Democrat in the Senate, saying point blank that the leadership obviously checked off on what she's saying. The leadership, the Democratic leadership, is prepared to go into January 1st and to let Demogeddon, as it would be now, occur, irrespective of the fact that the Congressional Budget Office says that a recession will likely result.
Well, look, it's just hot political rhetoric. January 20th, when Mitt Romney sworn in, the Republican House, Republican Senate, and Republican President will take care of it. But in the meantime, we have to put up with this kind of rhetoric, which is designed to try and make people feel that there is a reason to have this class warfare. He continues to demonize success. He continues to use rich as not just a 4-letter word, but a 4-letter word. And he tries to make people feel that there is something wrong with being successful in America. I think more and more people, though, are beginning to understand that this president really does come from an absolutely big government perspective. The government has to control everything. It has to, through health care under Obamacare, to now he wants us to think that the government is required to give us both permission and facilitate our succeeding in business.
And for people out there watching these two men right now, if this turns out to be a pivotal moment, at least in the revelatory nature of what he said Friday night in that firehouse number 1 in Roanoke, Virginia, the Governor Romney himself is being viewed as somewhat too constrained. The American people at a time when facing the Hill reporting 47% of the people they surveyed have given up on becoming wealthy in their lifetimes, which is, you know, it's distressing to all of us that so many people are giving up on the American dream. This Governor Romney, standing as the standard bearer for the Republican Party, he's got to be powerful enough in his public presence and statements to galvanize the interest, the attention, the belief, and the trust of the American people. Is he going to get there soon?
Lou, he's going to be there at the right time. Timing is everything in a campaign, particularly a presidential campaign. There are seasons and cycles to it. This is really the dead season, and with all due respect, it's kind of good to have Obama firing all his bullets now because it's going to be old hat pretty soon. He spent $54 million demonizing Governor Romney. About 2 weeks before the convention is when you really crank up your message, you crank up your response, and you start focusing. And I assure you, this campaign is ready to do it. I want to make one more point. Sure. When this president says that government gives you your business, so to speak, what he's talking about is the way he and his cronies in the White House practice government. They brought the Chicago formula, and they give business to the people that bundled and make contributions to them. And so he really believes that this is the right way to do it. You give a contract to your friend. You give a contract to somebody that raised money for you. You give a contract to someone who hired somebody that worked for the White House or the president or the vice president before. He did that with Solyndra. He did it with Fisker. He did it with Bright Sources. He did it with First Wind. It's a way of doing business that comes out of the slime of Chicago politics. This president was foolish enough to introduce into the discourse the word felon. And I say foolish because it reminds us that we should look at his background and look at Chicago, where felon and politics are synonyms.
Governor, with that, you got to remind us of the word felon, and we appreciate the catch-up as well as the look ahead. As always, Governor Sununu, thanks for being with us.
It's fun to be here, Lou.